Well, I'm really happy to be here with Zhou Tian, the composer of Broken Ink, that Capital City Symphony and Congressional Chorus will be performing on our concert this May. And Joe, the orchestra and I are really enjoying working on this piece. I mean, we're finding it to be really rich and evocative, just a lot of fun. Can you talk to us a bit about the inspiration for this music?
Yes. Well, first of all, what a pleasure to have you play this music. It's not a small piece, and with the choir and everything, we don't actually get to. At least I don't get to hear this piece very often, although it's been done, from time to time. But it's not like an overture or something else that gets played a lot. So it's always a pleasure and an honor that to see the commitment from you guys to program such a big piece, a new music. I fully understand, people don't, when they see the name and when they see the title, there's no familiarity. And to put that in a concert, in a metropolitan, area is risky. And I fully, realize that. And I applaud you for doing that. Well, Broken Ink is really a symphonic suite or orchestral suite with an optional choir, inspired by poetry of the Song Dynasty. As you know, there are two dynasties in Chinese history that are filled with fabulous poems and arts, namely the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty. They're kind of back to back. So the Song Dynasty runs from 960 to 12 something, and it's really known for its poetry. So, as a Chinese born composer, that's always been a big influence, almost as a part of our, day-to-day life, not only in an academic way where, as a student, you have to recite all these poems, but really, when I look back, a lot of those things, were part of my life before I, moved to the United States when I was a teenager. So it's I think this was 2013 or 14. My hometown, Hangzhou Philharmonic, decided to commission a piece based on the poetry of Song Dynasty. And this has special meanings because Hangzhou is the capital of the Southern Song. So I was born in the ancient, has a relationship to the ancient capital of this particular dynasty. So it felt, rather fitting to do something for my hometown orchestra. So I selected 5 poems, and I do have to say, the music is inspired by the poetry, but it's not a description or some kind of, in 2023 term, not a, music video to the source material. It's really just how I almost like impressionistic paintings. You open your eyes for 1 minute or 1 second, really, and then you capture that impression, and then you go away. You paint that thing. It's the same as a composer. I read that once or twice. It casts a impression on me. Then I went away to compose the work. So that's basically the backstory of this piece.
How did you choose the particular poems that you settled on?
That's a good question. Actually, I have the title with me right here because it's been actually more than 10, almost 10 years. So I need to actually make sure they are correct. I chose them based on the atmosphere. The and some, for example, the last one, there's actual a lot of content in the poem that really touches me. But the other parts of the piece, there are some of them. It's like seeing a painting. In Chinese Asian art, the painting and poetry are really a lot of times the same thing. You will go to the, for example, a gallery, you see a Chinese painting, and on it is poetry written on it. So it's the same thing, the imagery, imagination, and the literature all kind of waved into each other. So for example, the first one, the movement is called Hearing the Sound of the Rain and Bell. And immediately, it's just such a great imagery in my mind as a composer. I can already hear how I would, start this piece. It's just such a beautiful picture. And this one is the original title in Chinese is Bell Ringing in the Rain. And this is by Liu Yong, a Song Dynasty in the Chinese literature, a towering figure. And this one is about, two lovers partying in the rain, drinking quietly in front of an old pavilion and a magnificent river while the sound of the bell rings. So that to me is enough for a almost 10-minute movement. As composers, we don't, at least for me, I don't want something so concrete. So at least, tells me, every other minute, how is it go on? That alone is enough. And I can really go into, express my own imaginations through the power of the symphony orchestra. The second movement is watching the title board. And this one is after the same title by Liu Yong again. And this one is watching the splendid tidal board of the Qiantang River, which is in a real river in my hometown. And the second part of that is a drunken man hears the sound of the flute and drums. So, as a composer, when I design a piece, when it's a multi-movement piece, it's important to not only pay attention to the content of each movement, but also overall structure of the piece. Very often we associate poetry with something, an atmospheric, romantic, kind of soft singing. But for always, at least for me, for 30 plus piece, you need drama in the music, because at the end of the day, it's not a poetry reading, it's a symphonic piece. So I chose this one because this one has a lot of opportunities to create something larger than life. It's big, it's loud, it's but not in a bashing way, but in a sort of just you're in front of this magnificent river watching the tidal board. The tidal board of Qiantang River, by the way, is a kind of a famous scenic thing in my hometown. People literally had died if they get too close to the tidal. So it's a beauty with a certain danger in it. So I chose this one as a second movement, not only because it's powerful, but also, musically speaking, it brings some necessary drama to the music. It's very different from the first or the third movement. The third movement is called Dazzling Rain in the Plum Season. And this one is probably the most intimate movement of the five. I used cello solo extensively in this piece. It's almost like a micro cello concerto in this movement. So because again, I just felt this contrast that's very much needed for a symphonic piece. And I think rightly so, this one by He Zhu is about seeking love in a town full of fluffy catkins from blooming willows. So this is almost, to me, imagery of a slow motion. You know what I mean? Like you see the willow, blooming and falling from the tree, and someone is walking, but it's all in super slow motion. So this is what this movement, at least to me, is about. And the next one, again, is a big contrasting movement is called The Mighty River Runs Eastward. And this one is probably the most known out of the 5 poems in the original form, because this one, for people sort of study Chinese art, there's this Battle of Red Cliff. I'm sure in the 3 Kingdoms there are movies made about this one. So this is basically kind of a battle in a poetic sense, which is great because again it provides me, the composer, the opportunity to create contrast and drama in the music. So this one is actually basically a fast movement, and I get to utilize different parts of the orchestra, be symphonic in a way. And last movement is listening to the land. I love this this phrase in the poem. I just use this one phrase as the title, but the poem is actually called Forever in Happiness, reminiscing the bygone days. This one is by Xin Qiji. And this one is simply remembering heroes when the end of a dynasty is near. Now, in Chinese history, especially for poets, there is this great love for something that's, to describe something is ending. There's always this tragic sentimentality built into it, So especially a lot of poems got written when the old dynasty is dying, and a new emperor is coming or a new dynasty is coming in, and it's during that juncture of time a lot of poets write reminiscent, and this is a very classic way of expressing themselves. So I chose this one to end the piece. This one to me is musically give me a lot of license to be very lush, to be romantic, sort of but also they're remembering heroes, so it's not a just singing and niceties all along, but there is some drama in it as well. So that's basically why I chose those 5.
Very, very cool. So speaking of poetry, we have here with us also Allan Laiño, who's the artistic director of the Congressional Chorus and who's been working on the One Choral movement. Allan, did you want to talk about that or ask anything?
Yeah, Joe, thank you for your work. We've loved getting to know the piece, and especially for that particular movement, as you mentioned, it's so powerful and dramatic, and the chorus loves the opportunity to sing in an epic way. You mentioned that the suite is not necessarily programmatic, but there is that small section that has text in the tidal bore movement. And so we're curious as to what those words are. Is it a quote from the poem, or why those specific words there for the Chinese singers?
Yes, there's, as I remember, one phrase or so, right? One or two phrases in there. It's always, I have to admit, especially for a composer who is now living in America for more than 20 years. It's always that question: if there's any vocal music, what language? What are we going to do to do it? To sing in English in this way, as translated, it just didn't feel completely right. Plus, it was a commission from the orchestra in China, so I thought maybe just this one, almost it's like a code in the piece, because everything else is vocalese. They're doing ooh ah, all that, which I think it's quite fitting, because I don't want the words to I don't in a way, I don't want the audience to trying to figure out what they're singing, you know. So most of the words, the singing words, are vocalists. That one phrase is from the poet, from the poem itself, and that one basically is saying Qiantang River has always been there for thousands of years. The Qiantang River, of course, is causing the tidal bore, this magnificent view. So it's a phrase that's basically, deal with time, deal with the passage of time. So that's I thought it was, interesting and, kind of fitting to put it there.
And it sounds like the intention, like you said, was not necessarily for those words to even be heard, but if there are singers with that heritage, that they could have that shared moment of culture. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know. I have a weird feeling sometimes when we hear old texts, Latin, somebody singing Latin, or sometimes in Italian opera, or German opera, you don't understand the words, but you kind of understand what they're saying. It's just a weird sensation. It's that kind of thing, I just want to put this one code in there, and then, if people understand, that's great. If they don't, it's okay. It's part of the music.
Zhou, we're so grateful to have you here with us today. I think before we wrap things up, since we're going to be sharing this conversation with potential audience members for our concert, what would be your elevator speech to describe the sense of this music to somebody who has never heard your music before?
Oh, that's a great question. It's hard always to, describe one's music, but I would say Broken Ink is my attempt, a composer's attempt, to capture the essence of musical elements that was lost in translation from Asian texts. And it's a symphonic journey. You do not need to know anything about Chinese poetry to understand it, to appreciate it, because it was fully, we translated for the powerful Western Symphony Orchestra and choir. And the music is lush, it's dramatic, some parts even very romantic. And it does, if the audience knows, the Western repertoire of symphonic music, one can see the traces of those in my music as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. We're really looking forward to performing this piece. And also on the program, we have Jocelyn Hagen's The Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, multimedia work for chorus and orchestra and visuals. So it should be a very evocative program overall. And we're really looking forward to sharing your music with the public here in DC. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.